Good morning, everyone. Um, we've been very busy here on site, and you were busy on Zoom chatting with each other. So I love the fact that we're having our fellowship and enjoying one another's presence. But you know, it is time to start. um, one of the things I want to point out is that as you came into the site today, you might have noticed we're trying to step up our name tag game and get back online. So I want to commend all of you on Zoom. You're all wearing your name tags. I looked. Um, I think that's part of the problem. We got used to Zoom doing it for us. We all knew each other because our name was right there. Um, Although some of you were named your phone number or Sarah's iPhone or something. I mean, that kind of thing happens. But and if you are watching this either live on Zoom or later, that anonymity of not having your name there is perfectly okay. It is if you're not fully comfortable for all of us knowing who you are and knowing your whole story, that's okay because God knows and you need to have this experience. So you're welcome in that way. And if you're here with us, we want to make sure that if you're new to us, you know who all we are because, I've only been here 2 years, but I pretty much know everyone. It wasn't a big list. It was okay. But I don't want someone to walk in and have to learn everybody's name in 5 minutes because I don't know about your brain, but mine doesn't work well that way. Next week, I'll have no idea who you are. So, name tags are a sign of our welcome. And indeed, we want to be a welcoming place. We want to be a safe place, a place where you are free to be exactly who you are and exactly who God is calling you to be, who you understand yourself to be, and express yourself no matter what that means. Because God has created great diversity. And we need to appreciate the diversity, not just tolerate it. We need to accept all the gifts. And that's the theme that we're going through in our series, looking at the indigenous wisdom that Dr. Kimmerer writes about in Braiding Sweetgrass, because we remember that we have received gifts and it's our opportunity and responsibility to provide the gifts that we have. And so we're grateful for this land, which is a great gift to us, a gift that was not just given, but taken from people who stewarded it for a very long time, the Wabanaki people, to whom we need to show our gratitude and make amends. But we are here to celebrate and lift up this time together, knowing who we are, or at least knowing who we aspire to be. And we aspire to be people who live out our mission. That defines us as a congregation. We would rather be church and do church. I'm sorry, we would rather do church than be church. I got it wrong. You're just supposed to correct me. We'd rather do church than be church. We must not go to church, but be the church in the world by our actions. And so let us focus our time by beginning with what we do each week, reciting together our mission statement. Seeking to walk in the way
Walk
of
in the way of
Jesus,
Jesus.
we
We
are an
are an
open and
open and
affirming church,
affirming church,
faithfully
faithfully
using who
using
we
who we
are
are
and
and
what we
what we
have
have
to
to
serve
serve
those on the
those.
margins of our community. No matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And let us begin by welcoming one another to this time and this space.
and breathe. Come in and just be. Breathe. Breathe. If you need to pray, if you need to weep, wherever you are, whatever you need, come in and just be. Come in and just breathe.
Bunjokwa, Sewara Hunzios, Gotnigari Wessa, Dano de Tino Horado, Ne Aguego Gossat Stan Sarawana Sa Oyera. Aguego Oscar, Anti the Wahwet Nuni, Ne Ungwani Gora, Dano de Tino Horado, Ne Ungwasum A, Tukadinayota, Ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar, Anti the Wahwet Nuni, Ne Ungwani Gora, Dano de Tino Horado, Ne Yetinistaha Ohunja. Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, Tigahne Garunio, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Gunjok Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Odera Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Ohande Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Odinuma Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Gahip Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Onunkwa Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Junhekwa, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Gunderio, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Garunda Sum'a dano Overe Sum'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Ojida Ogu'a, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Gaieri ni Gawarage, e Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Yeti Sotogo Radiweras, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Chidawat nu Horado, ne Ejidawati a Joganeka Garakwa, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Yeti Sota a Sontaneka Garakwa, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Tinu Horado, ne Yojista Korunio, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Aguego Oscar anti de Wahwet Nuni ne Ungwani Gora dano de Chidawat nu Horado, ne Sungwayat Dizu, Tukadinayota ne Ungwani Gora. Ona tohni ore, wakaderi wat kwani, doga o tana zungat ni gorha, izagit ne eyes ora sundurun. Togadi na yota ne ungwat ni gura, tok ni gawanage.
Mother Earth, Father Sun, moon and stars, we all are one. We are all connected, we are all connected.
A sheaf of sweetgrass, bound at the end and divided into thirds, is ready to braid. In braiding sweetgrass, so that it is smooth, glossy, and worthy of the gift, a certain amount of tension is needed. Of course, you can't do it yourself by tying one end to a chair, or by holding it in your teeth and braiding backward away from yourself. But the sweetest way is to have someone else hold the end so that you can pull gently against each other, all the while leaning in, head to head, chatting and laughing, watching each other's hands, one holding steady while the other shifts the slim bundles over one another, each in its turn. Linked by sweetgrass, there is reciprocity between you. Linked by sweetgrass, the holder as vital as the braider. This will be our metaphor. Braiding sweetgrass is an intertwining of science, spirit, and story. Old stories and new ones that can be medicine for our broken relationship with Earth. A pharmacopoeia of healing stories that allow us to imagine a different relationship in which people and land are good medicine for each other. Will you hold the end of the bundle while I braid? Hands joined by grass. Can we bend our heads together and make a braid to honor the earth? And then I'll hold it for you while you braid too.
Boys and girls, old and young, all Earth's creatures live as one. We are all connected, we are all connected.
The Three Sisters. Very long ago, there were three sisters who lived in a field. The youngest was so small she could not yet walk. She crawled along the ground, dressed in green. The middle sister, who wore a bright yellow dress and darted back and forth across the field. The eldest sister stood tall and straight, and her body bent with the wind. She had long yellow hair and wore a green shawl. The three sisters loved one another very much and could not imagine living without the others. One day, a little Odawa boy came to the field. He was very handsome and knew the ways of the land. He could talk with the birds and the animals and was straight and fearless. The three sisters were very interested in this boy as they watched him use his stone knife to carve a bull or hunt with his bow and arrow. Late in the summer, of the boy's first visit to the field, the youngest of the three sisters disappeared. She was the one who could only creep along the ground. She could not even stand unless there was a stick she could cling to. But she was gone, and the other two sisters mourned her until the fall. The Indian boy returned to the field to gather reeds that grew at the edge of a small stream. He used the reeds to make arrow shafts. The two remaining sisters again watched him, fascinated. That night, the second sister disappeared. The one who always wandered here and there around the field. Now, there was only one sister left, the tall and straight sister. She did not bow her head in sorrow, though she mourned deeply and thought she could not live in the field alone without her sisters. As the days grew shorter and colder, her green shawl began to lose its color, and her hair became dry and tangled. Night and day she sighed for her sisters, but her voice was low like the wind, and no one heard her. One day, in the harvest season, the little Odawa boy heard the third sister crying, and he felt sorry for her. He took her into his arms and carried her to his home. And there, a delightful surprise awaited her. Her sisters were there, in the lodge, safe and very glad to be reunited. They explained that they had been curious about the little Odawa boy and had followed him home. And they had decided to stay because winter was coming and his home was warm and comfortable. The sisters also were making themselves useful to the boy and his family. The youngest, now all grown up, kept the dinner pot full, while the second sister, still in her yellow dress, dried herself on the shelf so she could fill the dinner pot later in the winter. The eldest sister was so pleased to be with her sisters again and so impressed with the help they gave the boy that she too began drying herself so the family would have a meal to use as the winter went on. And from that day to this, the three sisters were never separated again.
Welcome, everyone. In our Bringing Words to Life, our reading is from Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9, the First Nations version. Later the same day, Creator sets free, left that place and found a quiet spot to sit by the lake of Chief Garden. Once again, people began to gather around him. The number of people was so great that he sat down in a canoe and pushed out a little ways from the shore. The people gathered at the shoreline on the water's edge and sat down to listen to him. The great storyteller began to tell his stories, teaching people about Creator's good road. Here is one of the many stories he told them. Listen, he said. A seed planter went to plant some seeds and began to scatter them about on the ground. Some seeds fell on the village pathway, and the winged ones pecked at the seeds and ate them all. Some of the seeds fell on the rocks where there was only a little dirt. The plants sprouted up quickly, but when the sun came out, they dried up because they had no roots. Other seeds fell into the weeds, and thistles sprouted around the seeds and choked the life out of them. But some seeds fell on good ground, grew strong, and gave a harvest. Some gave 100 times what was planted, some 60, and others 30. The ones who have ears, let them hear and understand. So ends our reading.
So this is the end of the story. Everything we had, everything we did is buried in dust, and this dust is all that's left of us. And only a few ever worried. While the signs will clear, they have no idea. You just get used to living in fear or give up when you can't even see the future. We walk the plank with eyes wide open. We walk the plank with our eyes wide open. We walk the plank with our eyes wide open. Some people laugh at our bed sores. We made it out like we heard, and they were only words. They didn't add up to the change in the way we were living. And the saddest thing is all of it could have been avoided. But it was like to stop consuming is to stop being human. Why'd I make a change if you won't? We're all in the same boat, staying afloat for the moment. We walk the plank with eyes wide open. We walk the plank with our eyes wide open. We walk the plank with our eyes wide open. With eyes wide open, we walk the plank, we walk the plank. With eyes wide open, we walk the plank, walk the plank. With eyes wide open, we walk the plank. So, is that the end of the story?
In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer has a chapter where she speaks about the census in her small town. And she realizes that if as the native people would encourage that more than humans were counted as persons, that personhood should not be limited to humanity. If that were the case, then, well, the leaders might be the trees. And the leader of the trees is the maple, and so therefore she lives in Maple Nation. And actually there has been some work done on that. What trees dominate different areas? What if our boundaries were organized around those creatures that we have our allegiance to because they also deserve it? And what nation would we be in? And so there are a variety of areas, but we would continue to be in Maple Nation here. Even though we are in the Pine Tree State. I get that. It's a big state. You got to go a little farther north to get those boreal woods, right? We're not quite there. We're still in Maple Nation here. So we share something in common with the author of the book and the humans who have spent time living with these more than humans much longer than any of us and shared their wisdom over time through generations. And they would tell us, as we have heard in previous stories, that the maples once flowed with syrup. Oh, if only, right? Now it takes some work. We must take 40 gallons of sap just to get 1 gallon of syrup. We must contribute our gifts to their gifts. But these maples have been teaching us, have been speaking to those, as Jesus would say, who have ears to hear, the lesson of offering yourself as a gift. And 24/7, they are who they are. And in the course of a year, the rising of the sap and the returning of the sap is done effortlessly. It is their work. It is their labor. It defines who they are. And they never stop. Do you ever stop in your work? What is it about us that is different? What is it that makes it so hard for us to offer our gifts? That's what we need to look at. Who are we? And are we listening to our neighbors, to our siblings, the trees? Or as the story today tells us, are we listening to the 3 sisters? And we know from agricultural practice that there's wisdom in that practice, that these peoples who lived close to the land, who understood how things grow, understood scientific truth before we had scientific truth to prove it, right? There's, yes, a practicality to growing your beans growing up on the stalk of the corn stalk, and there's a wisdom to planting your squash so that those leaves retain the water. And that came through trial and error, no doubt, over generation and generation. But science confirms that these 3 plants all are aggressively seeking what they need at the expense of other things that then can be offered. See, our scientific mind sees it as competition, right? They're all competing for the light. And so the corn grows up quickly, but then it needs the nitrogen in the soil, and it needs the water. And the beans are literally providing a way for all this nitrogen in the air to get into the soil. Science has figured that out. Well, people who lived farming the land for generation after generation already knew that, even if they couldn't explain it in that way, because they were listening to the 3 sisters. Now, you and I might think it's odd to listen to an inanimate object, to a plant, to a tree. But maybe we should accept this wisdom. Maybe we should start to listen. You know, we've got this wonderful, beautiful art museum up the hill. And I'm sure if you visited it, you've talked about the art speaking to you. I mean, really, what more is a statue, a sculpture, than stone speaking, telling a story? There's different ways of listening, different ways of understanding, different ways of perceiving. And we ought to be more open to those stories, those messages, to listening, so that we might grow. And maybe we should consider what it means in our lives. When people look at you, what story do they see? What story does your existence tell? What are your gifts that you are giving 24/7, constantly? What is it that names who you are? What is your story without words? Jesus listened to creation. Jesus heard the creation speak, the Creator speaking through the creation. And you'll notice most of his parables involve exactly that. The one we heard today about the seed and the sower tells us all kinds of things. In fact, he had to unpack it for his followers. And we can unpack it if we want. That's not where we're going to go today. We're going to look at the fact that in that story, one important takeaway is that the seed falls on different soils, right? There are different soils. We're not all the same. And we all have to cope with different things. And maybe in our spiritual lives, we have a bit of a choice what soil we're going to plant the seeds in. Certainly in our gardens we do. And we know that, right? I mean, it is New England, so I know that we're growing rocks because that's what grows here. Where do they come from? You go out and till the new rocks, they grew from last season. They're just always here. But you know that you have to cope with that. And so you plant accordingly, right? And maybe you bring in topsoil. Maybe you bring in fertilizer because you have to do that. And you know whether you're planting in the sun or the shade and what will grow there. All of those bits of knowledge are critical, and you make choices. And in our spiritual life, we need to do the same. What kind of environment are we choosing for ourselves so that we might grow and thrive? That's what Jesus is getting at in this parable, that we need to be the kind of people who choose the best for our spiritual growth. Now, I will grant you that there's also a side of the story that talks about the randomness of it. We don't control sometimes if we're the seed being tossed in among the thistles and getting choked out, or if we're the ones falling among the rocks and maybe the birds are coming and eating the seeds. Sometimes that's beyond our control. That's why part of the important lesson of this parable is that we need others. Like the three sisters. That it's not about competition. It's about complementarianism. That's not the word I want. It's about complementing one another, not competing with one another. It's important to be there for one another. And so sometimes the gift that we need are fellow believers who come along and help us out. It's as simple as that. And sometimes there aren't others to help us. Sometimes we're totally alone. And the sun is scorching, or the thistles are choking, or the birds are eating, and we just need the gardener, the holy heavenly gardener, to come and water and to weed and to care for us. So we should be slow to judge. We should be patient. Because you can't garden, you can't grow anything without patience. And you can't judge something that won't grow. And so whether it's our own spiritual life, where we need to be gentle with ourselves, not judging, being patient, waiting for what comes next, or whether it's other people who aren't quite growing the way we think they ought to, right? Whether, maybe we're the corn and we're saying, where are those beans to give me some nitrogen? Or we're the beans saying, where's that corn for us to grow on? Or we're saying, that squash better come along because we need one another. Maybe judgment isn't the case. Maybe it's about understanding our need for one another and caring. And maybe it's about understanding our gifts. What is the thing that you bring to the dinner party? What is it that God has blessed you with, and God is nurturing you? God, the gardener, working in you to bring that forth. What is it? Or what are the gifts? Because it doesn't have to be just one thing. Don't get yourself into the corner of, I couldn't figure out what my gift was, so I did nothing. Understand that God has a purpose for you here and now. One of the reasons it took me so long to finish seminary is I thought that was true. that God wanted me doing things, not just sitting in a seminary class learning. And that led to some problems because, the doing that I was doing taught me things that I wasn't learning in seminary, and actually taught me some things that questioned the things I was trying to learn in seminary, and it took a long time. But along the way, I was being the person I thought God wanted me to be. I was giving my gifts, not waiting until that day when they were all polished and ready. It's Christmas every day when you do that. You don't just have to wait. And maybe you don't wait. Do you have that practice? Do you get at least maybe one gift you can open the night before? No?
Yeah.
You allowed to shake the presents and figure it out?
We open one.
Oh, you get one, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't wait forever.
It's also just bribing them to go to bed.
You see, God is doing good in our lives. God is gifting each and every one of us, and we are more than the three sisters. We're the many, many sisters. We need one another. That's part of the message. And that's wisdom that indigenous folks have known for a long time. It's wisdom that Jesus taught us in the parables, and it's something that we too quickly and too easily forget. And if we concern ourselves only with our own spiritual growth, well, then we're forgetting that our gifts are not ours to keep. Our gifts are to give away. That's the point. We need to be serving the common good. That's what God is doing in us, is giving us gifts so that we can give them away so that good will happen in the world. That's God's way. It's not our way. I wouldn't do it that way. I've seen what God has to work with. I'd do something miraculous on my own, probably, but that's not how God works. God has us. God wants us. God loves us. And God wants to love each and every one of us into giving our gifts ceaselessly, constantly. And when you do that, it's not work. And you will find the patterns of giving and resting, the nourishment. The sun rises, the sun goes down. It doesn't blaze all day long. We need it all. The rains come, and thankfully the rains go. And we need it all. Now, we have not been good citizens of Maple Nation. That almost goes without saying, doesn't it? We maybe don't need to beat ourselves up much more about it, but the truth of the matter is that in a generation, within 50 years, the environment we are in now will be hostile to maple trees. Hostile to them. The leader of the trees in our area will have a hard time surviving. We will change from Maple Nation to Oak Nation. And maybe that's the way of the world and that's what's to come, but we know we have a hand in that, and maybe we should do something about slowing that. If you've been observant over time living in this area and you are aware and listen to the world around you, you will have seen that the boreal forest, the pine tree nation, which is just to our north, is also to our height, its elevation. You go to the mountains. When you hike a mountain, you notice that the habitat changes. You get into subalpine habitat. The conifers take over. The deciduous trees disappear. And it's a different habitat there. And I know, because I've seen it, that line keeps going farther up the mountain. It's like water's rising and the island losing space. I know that because I've been part of a long-term study to look for Bicknell's thrushes, which nest only in the boreal woods, but also then at the high peaks. They have not nested on the peak of Mount Greylock in Massachusetts for 50, 60 years now. They once did. The habitat's no longer suitable for them, so they can migrate north and find new homes. But I was there one time and saw a snowshoe hare. How's it going to get north? It's not. And how are the pines that live there when they get supplanted by the maples that come next, and maybe, sadly, ultimately by the oaks that show up? What will they do other than give their lives, lay down, and give their nutrients back to the soil? Yes, that's the way of living. We die and we give back. But we have a choice, my friends, in our living to choose what we do with our gifts. We can hold on to them and nurture them and just be for ourselves and only pass them on in whatever ways our children and our children's children learn them from us. Whatever little ways we share our knowledge. Or we can choose, because we have the moral agency. In fact, we have the spiritual responsibility to give those gifts, to give them for the common good, to create changes that guide the future. We have that power. We have that obligation. We can do it through the giving of our gifts, not something that we don't know how to do, but doing the thing we do know how to do. And this is our responsibility, to love our neighbor. Whether our neighbor is our tree neighbor, or our river neighbor, or even our neighbor who is not yet born, not yet hatched, not yet sprouted. Amen. Let us take some time to turn our attention to our God, who is very close and very present, very attentive, and share our joys and concerns. I would like to begin with those who are online. You may use the chat, and if you're here in the room, you may write things on the paper, and we can share them that way, and that's how you'll be sure to get them into our weekly newsletter if you'd like others sharing that prayer. But you could also unmute yourself if you are online and like to share a joy or concern with us now.
I want to share joy that Molly came back from camp from Pilgrim Lodge, and she loved it as she did last year. And it's such a blessing. And I want to thank Main Conference for her tuition.
This is our prayer.
Continuing prayers for the hungry and the homeless.
This is our prayer. How about here in the room? If you raise your hand, we'll bring you the mic.
Prayers for my wife Denise, myself, and her family as we have a celebration of life for her dad today.
This is our prayer. Well, friends, let's take some silence to enable us, perhaps, to open the ears of our hearts, to widen our understanding and welcome God's presence in, gentle as a breath, speaking to us love and concern for these issues we have raised, and that God may assure us that we have been heard with those prayers that we hold close, and that the Spirit might speak to show us the ways that our gifts are to be used in response to these very prayers. Let us pray. Great Spirit, move among us. Move us. Help us to not become immobile through overthinking. Help us not to worry whether we are soil or seed or where we fit into the parable or what it all means. Help us to understand that your wisdom is deep, ongoing, living, that you indeed are wisdom, and that you walk with us and show us the way, and that we don't have to have all the answers before we take a step. That indeed we should embrace the important questions that move us, that draw us, that bring us like a seed bursting forth into the daylight, reaching for the heavens. Help us to just focus on that thing that we can do now, that thing that we ought to do now, the thing that is ours to do now. Reminding us that that is how we not only obey you, but that we show our love for you. For our obedience to you is in showing love to you, to ourselves, and to others. The others who are unlimited, the others who are other than human, the others who are those who are not even like us, those who do not like us, those who would do us harm, those who are not yet. Help us to be so like you, that we love like you, that we are filled with love and therefore filled with all the power that we need. For if indeed you are love, then love is the power that sustains and builds and conquers and brings great hope. We thank you that love became incarnate, that you showed us that humans can be like you, can love like you, can live like you. You showed us by being one of us, by becoming Jesus, by gifting us with his life, his love, his teaching, and his words, the words of the prayer that have bound your people together for centuries and bind us together now with your people of all times and all places as we pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. As we give the gifts of who we are, doing what we are called to do, there is that currency of giving, actual currency, that is important. It's how we work in the economy that we live in. And so if you have a gift that you might share of your time, your talent, and your treasure, we encourage you to do so. You may leave a gift in the plate if you're here in the room, and you can always visit our website to take you to a location where you can direct your giving. And for that, we give you thanks. And we give thanks for this great gift of creation. Thankful for it in our call to care for it. And so we take our moment now to consider creation care.
I just have an opinion piece to share from Heather Cox Richardson that she published a few days ago, and then a few things about helping with the climate crisis that was in the paper today. A few days ago, a team of international researchers confirmed that human-caused climate change is driving the life-threatening heat waves in the U.S. and Europe. The U.S. has broke more than 2,000 high-temperature records just in the past month, and it looks like July will be the hottest month on Earth since scientists have kept records. Another study published a few days ago warns that the Atlantic currents that transport warm water from the tropics north are in danger of collapsing as early as 2025 and as late as 2095, with a central estimate of 2050. As Arctic ice melts, the cold water that sinks and pulls the current northward is warming, slowing the mechanism that moves the currents. The collapse of that system would disrupt rain patterns in India, South America, West Africa, endangering the food supplies for billions of people. It would also raise sea levels on the North American East Coast and create storms and colder temperatures in Europe. On Sunday and Monday, the ocean water off the tip of Florida reached temperatures over 100 degrees, some places 110, the same temperature as an average hot tub. According to the Coral Restoration Foundation, a nonprofit organization in Florida's Key Largo that works to protect coral reefs, the hot water has created a severe and urgent crisis, with mortality up to 100%. The Mediterranean Sea also hit a high record this week, reaching 83.1 degrees Fahrenheit. An op-ed by David Wallace Wells in the New York Times noted that more land burned in Quebec in June than in the previous 20 years combined. Across Canada, more than 25 million acres burned, and most of Canada's fire season is still ahead. Professor Ian Lowe of Australia's Griffith University told The Guardian that he recalled reading the 1985 report that identified the link between greenhouse gases and climate change and worked to draw public attention to it. Now all the projected changes are happening. I reflect on how much needless environmental damage and human suffering will result from the work of those politicians, business leaders, and public figures who have prevented concerted action. History will judge us very harshly. Former Vice President Mike Pence, who is running for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, today unveiled his economic proposal. It calls for eliminating the EPA and the Biden administration's incentives designed to address climate change. And that he is in line with Republican lawmakers, that at least 4 of the bills released so far by the House Appropriations Committee for 2024 include cutting funding to address climate change that Congress already has appropriated. And that Project 2025, which was provided the blueprint for a Trump presidency, says the Biden administration's climate fanaticism will need a whole of governing unwinding and calls for more use of fossil fuels. The United Nations Environmental Program and Columbia University says the court cases related to climate change have more than doubled in 5 years. 34 of the 2,180 lawsuits have been brought forward on behalf of children, teens, and young adults. And therein lies a huge problem for all of us. And there was just a op-ed today in the paper by Ron Sandler from Rangeley for what you can do to help save the climate crisis. Just some few suggestions, which I know we've heard before, but I'll just reiterate them. Learn more about how the world is warming, the causes, consequences, and actions that need to be taken. Talk about it a lot with friends, family, neighbors, everybody, and anybody. Get involved, join a climate group or 2, ask how you can help. Get political. Take to the streets, contact your elected officials repeatedly at all levels of government, write to them, talk to them. They were elected to serve us, and there is no higher service than protecting the world we live in. Walk the talk, take steps to reduce your emissions. It is very freeing, and pace yourself. We are in this for the long haul.
Thank you. A few announcements. We'll get through them quickly. There are a number of them, but pretty straightforward. If you filled out one of the cards that looks like that, we have a basket in the back where we've collected them. We need to send them back. So if you haven't yet and you want to lift your voice in care of the creation, send your concerns off to the EPA. That's what, yeah, they're going to the EPA, right? Is that where we're sending those? I forget now. Anyway, that's... yeah, I think that's where this campaign, a number of campaigns. But anyway, please fill them out or get them in so we can ship them out this week. We'll do it all together. Also this week on Thursday, we continue our gatherings where we tell our stories to one another. It wanders in the direction it wants to go in, but it starts with the prompts from the message today and the chapters of the book. If you've read it, and if you haven't, you still have a story to tell. We appreciate getting together, and it's the commute to the Zoom meeting is always as close as wherever your device is, so you know it's easy. So maybe we'll see some of you on Thursday. Coming up, there is this online planning workshop retreat there is also this Tuesday from the Worship Design Studio a quick seminar online at noon on Tuesday. So if you have any inkling of desire to participate in planning worship, let me know. I want you to access these resources, and then we can access one another with our ideas and contribute together. And I have some ideas about what's coming up using their materials, and I may be seeking you out. I have ideas of recruits, so don't be surprised if that comes up. So, but if you would like to be part of planning worship, just let me know, and you will be. A couple of dates to save, both for meetings, both at the same place. So that makes it easy, right? Just don't show up on the wrong day or the wrong time for the wrong meeting. But the meeting for our association, the Living Water Association, will be Sunday, September 17th. We can take off from here and get to Pilgrim Lodge in time for the worship service together. So it's one of those things, if you don't need to be a delegate to go, right? Because we're worshiping together. So if you want to be part of a beautiful outdoor worship setting, join us that day in September. And then come back in October, almost exactly a month later. The 20th and 21st are the dates for the conference annual meeting, and there will be workshops, and there will be a virtual option for those. There will be a way to connect that way if you don't go. So more details will come out on all of those things as we approach them, but for now, just keep in mind that there's a September and an October day that you might want to be at Pilgrim Lodge to be in fellowship with the wider church. And finally, next week is a Communion Sunday, being the first Sunday of the month. And as always, you are encouraged or warned, I'm not sure which, to bring your own elements. If you'd like to bring elements that to use on your own, please feel free. If you're doing this online, you will need to provide your own. But if you don't and you show up here, just know that you got to have little fingers, and the kids may get help, because opening those little packets of the communion elements is always a trick. So feel free to bring your own. Are there other announcements? Anything else to bring up for the good of the order, as they say? All right, then let us sing our closing hymn. They will know we are Christians by our right doctrines and beliefs. They'll know we are Christians by our beautiful worship and right practices. We should have known all along that's not right. They will know we are Christians by our love. What is the story that your life tells without words? Go forth and live that life. With words and without words, give glory to God the Creator. May this Creator God, who knows even the sparrow that falls, lift you on gentle breezes that you might soar with eagles, and bless you with insight and wisdom. And give glory to the Christ, who comes to you, will come to you every day in the form of the least, the last, and the lost. May the Christ bless you with the gift of tears, that you may weep with all who weep. And give glory to God's wild, untamed spirit, God's wild goose spirit, which leads us into places where we will not go on our own. May the wild goose of God lead you into those places and bless you with the foolishness to follow. And may the love of God be with you all, and all those whom you love, and all those whom none but God loves, now and until that day of God's judgment, when justice will roll down like waters, and peace will blossom among all the peoples. Amen.